Got the hood off. In a sheer act of stupidity, I did this by myself. I had never done one of these before. These hoods are about the most deceiving thing I've ever seen. They look light. When you rock them around, they kind of seem like they might be light. But they are anything but light. Between fighting it to get it over the radiator spout and off the dash, it was a constant battle. It wanted to rock both ways and trying to hop one off the other while the other end. It was an absolute mess. If you're going to take one of these off, by God, grab a friend. In the course of taking said hood off, a wire got away from me, and of course I've successfully busted off the top stud of what I am now assuming is probably the 6-volt coil, which for testing purposes and stuff I wasn't against trying to use that. I really actually wanted to avoid cracking that open and fooling with it, just hoping that, hey, you know, you never know, maybe it works, maybe the points aren't fouled, maybe we still have spark here. But it looks like now that this has happened, we may have to, at the very least, upgrade to a 12-volt coil. Well, we've got no choice. We've got to put a coil in, and if I'm going to put a coil in, it's going to be a 12-volt coil. In other fun and exciting news, we've got our cleaned-up carburetor mounted on there. I've got my air cleaner and intake pipe all nice and cleaned and painted up. So I'll get those on there, and yeah, we'll go from there. If you'll recall, in my sort of first video of this thing showing it off, this bar for the 3-point came with this tractor, but I had the hot idea, rather than rolling and pushing this thing all the way to my garage, if I just put this on my other tractor, I can use the 3-point to lift on this grill, I hope, and drag the thing to my garage and get a good hard day's work in on this thing. We've got a distributor we're going to try and hook up. We've got some other wires we're going to hook up. So let's get into it. Well, unlike many of my ideas, this one turned out pretty darn good, I'd say. So when you're done, you just drop your 3-point hitch. See if I can get the pin unhooked. And you're done. Easy as that. I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do a straight push button from the battery to this, to the starter, and then just one little toggle switch for the ignition. That's about the simplest, cleanest thing I can think of to do. We got a battery. I traded in the battery I thought I was going to use for this. I decided to go again with this battery. Has terminals down here and up here. I think what I'm going to do is, just so there's not a bunch of stuff running off one terminal, I'm going to, you know, have my cables here, but I think my alternator charging cable, I think I'm going to run to here, and that just kind of frees up, you know, that way it's not too much hooked on the same cable or whatever, try and get away with, you know, the minimum amount of wirings. Also, my battery tray here is looking a little sad. I think what I'm going to do is just take my grinder and just sort of clean this up and get some of this, you know, flaky, cruddy stuff off. Alright, so it's time for another quick update. We've got our battery, we've got new cables, I've got my button in. This wasn't too hard, I just got one of these simple push button starter buttons off of Amazon. I had to Dremel out around here just a little bit and then just put a couple of 1/4-inch bolts in to hold it, and I think that will do plenty fine. This frame piece here is pretty durable. When you hit it, it doesn't flex or do anything stupid like that, so I think that's going to be the route we take with that. As much as I wanted to use and save that distributor and everything in it, what wound up being the simplest and I think ultimately cost-effective thing is I went online and I got one of these Pertronix kits for this distributor. These things I've never really used. I don't really have anything for them or against them. Online reviews kind of vary. Some people say great things, some people say not so great things. But I think it's probably the better way to go, and since I've never done it before, I figured this would be the perfect project. Also, not that it has anything to do with the tractor running, my toolbox was in the way of some other stuff, and somewhere up here is where my ignition switch is going to go, and this just sits up in here. But to give myself a little bit of extra working room, I was actually just fooling around and cleaned this box out. It had a couple of rust defects. Let me get you in some good lighting here. One of them, I can't remember which one. Anyway, one of these was a rust hole. What happened to this thing was it sat with a bunch of dead grass, I assume from bush hogging, and some other mix-match misc tools or whatever. Water got in this thing, it sat, it got a little bit cruddy, so I just kind of dremelled out the rust hole to make it sort of like a drain hole, sort of like it was supposed to be, almost like it was intended. And then on the inside, I painted it white, because when you paint these things black, it's hard to see little pins and stuff that are rolling around down there. So I've never done it that way before, but now's as good as any time to try, so that's where we're at with that. But we're going to get our distributor on. We're going to run some power to it, and we'll see if this bad girl's got any spark in her. Alright, so I've made some pretty good progress here. So, battery's hooked up, my ignition wire's hooked up, my distributor is hooked up. This is just temporary right now. It's just running directly from the coil, around, down, to my little push-pull ignition switch, which is just plumbed right to the battery. Took my plugs out and I cleaned those up just with a wire wheel. So I guess now we're at the point we're gonna put this up against, I've got a little area cleaned off on top of this bolt. We're gonna see if we've got some spark, and if we've got some spark, we'll see if we can make a run. Alright, so you just take your little spark plug here, the outer casing of this acts as the ground. You just touch that to another grounded area on the block, and if we crank her over with the ignition on, we should see some spark, hopefully. Ignition on. Oh, there's something. Nice. Alright, well, we'll put this back together, and assuming that she's timed right, I certainly hope it is. If I run some fuel to her, we should see some signs of life, hopefully. Alright, we'll see what happens. If all the hard work was worth it. Not only is it running, it's running really good. She likes a little bit of choke, but that's alright. See if we can kill that a little bit now that she's warming up. Wow. Beautiful. I'm gonna see about getting some water in her real quick before she gets hot. I don't want to shut her off.